Hey there everyone, Afrodo Reviews here. And this isn't quite a review, obviously, but I just wanted to get a quick explanation about why, again, I have ended up not doing videos on time. And that's just because, guess what? I got sick again. That and work. So, unsurprising. About a week ago, I say a week ago, but it wasn't even that. I basically, because of Super Bowl Sunday, oh no, I guess it has actually been exactly 1 week as of this recording. But on Super Bowl Sunday, we were basically worked 8 days in a row, and only the first and last day were days that were less than 10 hours, so yay about that. So naturally, when I got home, I was just too exhausted to record and edit and stuff. So unfortunately, that's why not much happened in those 8 days. In addition to that, shortly after that, I got sick. Thankfully, it didn't last as long as last sickness, but as you can tell, it's still here. I'm gonna, obviously, that gives me a fair warning. I'm gonna have to warn you guys about the next few videos. I'm probably gonna sound a little congested, a little husky in my voice, but that being said, I just wanted to let you guys know that, this is why it took so long to get up. And I have my apologies. Hopefully I can get back to a regular schedule. My work should be slowing down, although I've heard that for the past 2 months. So hopefully I'll be able to actually, go back to uploading consistently rather than, 2 weeks and then I can't. 2 weeks and then, I can't again. So, yeah. That being said, my apologies for the small break I was on, and I'm hoping that, the next few videos make up for that. Obviously, there's going to be a fair amount of backlog that I need to do. The stuff I've, finished reading, like, almost a month ago now. In addition to, I actually found the Ascendant review. That was one of the things that I was supposed to put out before the New Year's even ended, but I lost the footage for a while. I recently found it. I think I accidentally put a backup on one of my flash drives, and I'm thankful of that. But at the same time, it also means that that's going to be a video I recorded like a couple months ago, and you're just now going to watch it. So fair warning, when that comes out, that'll be old, and it might reference some stuff that happened a while ago. So fair warning on that end. But yeah, with that being said, just buckle in, relax. The next video I should be publishing should be coming out literally, I don't know, like seconds after this one. I'm going to publish this as an explanation. I might even just include this in the start of my next video. But, yeah. So, see you guys later. Well, enjoy the review. And if you guys can do me a favor and obviously like and, comment on videos to help me get that algorithm juiciness back, that'd be very nice. You don't have to if you don't. I'm not doing this for the benefit of being a massive YouTube star, but I do want to one day. It would be nice. It'd be nice to be able to do this as a job, as opposed to a highly physical labor job when I have a bad knee. Actually, technically, I have 2 bad knees, but one's worse than the other. So, just enjoy yourself. Hey there, everyone. Afrodo Reviews here, coming at you with another review to help you decide: is that book worth reading of a second breakfast? Or does it deserve the fiery pits of Mount Doom? That's what we're here to decide. I'm just going to pretend she's not there. Considering the book I'm reviewing today, I'm not sure I'm this comfortable with you that close to me. I love you so much. I love you. Okay. Anyways, today's book is another Patterson novel, directly from the mind of the advertising executive pretending to be an author. James Patterson's ghostwriter published this book on September 3rd, 2012. A New York Times bestseller, as much as that's slowly losing its meaning the longer I delve into Patterson's works, this book was adapted into the CBS show in 2015 and ran for 3 seasons before it was eventually canceled in 2017. Which, is probably for the better. I actually remember keeping up with the series when it came out and thinking that the last season is pretty weird and strange. That being said, other than mentioning that this book received a sequel novella on June 7th, 2016, there isn't much else that I can talk about this book in terms of background. So let's have the report card, shall we? And let's go on with the cover of this book because... this isn't a great one. I mean, honestly, looking at it, I can't tell you what this cover wants me to take away from it. It's a side aerial view of some city with the Eiffel Tower. And before you say it's Paris, just remember that there are over 50 replicas of the Eiffel Tower in the world. And that's all that's here. Now, in hindsight, maybe this might be trying to push a green message of this book a little further. Maybe the view of the city is meant to invoke a disbelief about the amount of pollution that the city has. But I want to clarify that is me trying to make sense with future knowledge, not anything else that the cover itself is saying for itself. Furthermore, you notice this little blurb right here? Something bad is happening out there. Flip it over and find out that it says something very bad. Which, it's more like a child whispering something to me than invoking the sense of dread that it clearly wants me to feel. Honestly, I had to share that one because it made me laugh. And it's like, the cover, the back and the front cover don't even mix. I'll give it that the 3-color scheme does give it a little bit of interest with the contrasting colors of it, but I mean, I don't know. I don't take anything away from this cover at all. But let's go on to the synopsis. Now, for the sake of ease, I'm just going to skip reading the book's synopsis because the story really is as simple as this. Scientist Jackson Oz has a theory for a long time that one day animals are going to snap and attempt to wipe out humanity. He's right, and we see the events occur over the course of the book while Oz does his best to stop it. That's pretty much the long and short of it. So let's get into why I don't like this book. I mean, shocker, I know, I have such a high history of favor towards the Patterson work these days. But let me give a quick disclaimer real quick and say that when I started this book, I was actually somewhat optimistic on my takeaway. For the first 100 pages of Zoo, I actually only had 3 notes. One was a joking riff on a character saying something like a little stupid. The second was noting that the author clunkily just said, "I got wet," to explain how a character falling into a river got wet. And the third was a note that in the CBS adaptation, a character known as Abe is much more likable than he is in the book, where he's just kind of a racist twat in this one. The book itself is even promising, despite following the typical Patterson's ghostwriter style of 4 or 5 pages per chapter. The chapters felt denser than normal, and the story was, at the very least, keeping my attention. Now, those of you who've watched my channel for a while know that I put 4 Blind Mice on my worst books of 2022. And that wasn't by accident. The story was awful, the twist was given away in the very beginning, and one of the things that annoyed me a little bit was, for an adult work, it was written like it was written for children. In the sense that, when you opened it, it was huge, the font was really big, and everything was double spaced. So it felt like it was, like before you even say I got a big print edition, I didn't. I checked that multiple times to make sure it wasn't a big print edition. It just was written like that for the hardcover of the book. Now obviously that might be because this book is slightly smaller, but still, it was a little better for me. But then page 100 hit, and it's like something, like a switch got flicked. All of a sudden, the bad writing was back, and it felt like it got worse as it went on. Like on page 103, we're expected to feel some kind of shock when Jackson Oz accidentally runs out of ammo while trying to save a woman from a float of crocodiles. Except due to the writing style of Patterson's Ghost, we're explicitly reminded at the start of the chapter how many bullets Oz has. And because the chapters are typically only at most 4 pages, 5 pages long, it's not shocking when he suddenly runs out of ammo. It wasn't long enough for us as an audience to forget that, even with the high stakes of the current chapter. Now, I try to narrow down the reason that page 100 seemed to be the turning point that made this book just lose all my investment. And I can't narrow it down concretely to a single reason. My first thought was maybe this is when the love interest Chloe is introduced. Yeah, she has a last name and backstory, but it doesn't matter. Because for all intents and purposes, she's there to make goo-goo eyes at Oz, cheerlead for his scientific theories, and then have and watch his kid. She really has no character of her own and feels like she's just there as a replacement goldfish after Oz is dumped by his original girlfriend in the story. But I also think that maybe I just hit a wall and all of my good graces vanished at this point, as if suddenly I realized what I was looking at wasn't a river of mediocre tea, but rather a fetid swamp of crap water. Because there were a couple things before that I honestly should have called out, but for some reason I didn't in my notes. For example, Oz's main theory that animals are becoming predisposed to react violently to humans, with the inevitable conclusion that one day the animal kingdom's going to try to wipe man out. He's been trying to be taken seriously for years, and truly and honestly believes that we need to protect ourselves from the eventual war between humans and animals. Except that he owns a pet chimpanzee. Let me repeat that. The guy who is fear-mongering about something eventually coming that will make all animals kill all humans owns a pet chimp. An animal notorious for being a very dangerous pet to own, and with a long history of snapping on their owners and doing some really gruesome damage. I feel like I should not have to explain why this is idiotic behavior. Past that, the book also just kind of gets worse the longer it goes. Maybe page 100 was when it fell out of mediocre and just went straight into bad. Like, legitimately, and just, kept getting worse. The trademark Patterson novel style does nothing to help his book, and at times, chapters just seem to end because the ghostwriter was dangerously close to giving a chapter 6 pages. The best example of this is chapter 64 and 67, where a group of Russian hunters are being chased by an army of wolves. The chapters don't connect to the rest of the story, and are just part of an increasingly pointless attempt to show how the animal attacks are increasing throughout the world, even though the story has already firmly established that by now. So when it splits it up and tries to leave you on a cliffhanger, you don't understand why. This isn't going to come back later, we aren't going to find these hunters again later, and even the second chapter ends with the, yeah, you're clearly never going to see these guys again, and the events that are currently happening here aren't something that are going to come up again. We're already being told about them somewhere else. But it's not just on a story level that I found this book bad. Even on a technical level, this book got baffling at some points. For one, I don't understand why the book continuously switches between third-person and first-person point of view. Oz's chapters are told from the first-person perspective, which makes sense. He's our main character and we're in his head. It makes sense to provide us his biased and focused worldview when it comes to the HAC, I forget what it stands for, but that's his big theory that animals are going to snap on us. However, the ghost so frequently cuts back to third-person perspectives that tell things outside of Oz's perspective that I have to ask, why bother writing Oz's chapters in the first person? And why not just stick with a third-person point of view throughout? Like, I don't know which ghost that Patterson used for this book. When I think back on it, I do remember this coming from the Maximum Ride series, a series I really liked in middle school, or I think even early high school. And I remember Maximum Ride, our main character, her chapters were always told in the first-person point of view, except for that one book where she was replaced by a clone of herself. And that worked because we got to see the clone's perspective because she was Maximum Ride, but a different version of Maximum Ride. I'll go to the Maximum Ride series again one day. Maybe for this coming July, for my nostalgia month. But one of the things that, like I said, it doesn't make sense, and it really breaks the immersion every time the book continuously switches between first person, third person, first person, third person, first person, third person. But okay, and another thing though, I don't know which Patterson ghost he was using for this book. But man, he did not know how to use similes. Just take a look at a couple of the similes I found in this book.
Bowen's eyes twinkle like strawberry shortcakes. Then I remembered the grenades that dangled like avocados from the sergeant's vest.
They're all like that. But to be fair, the book has a weird obsession with metaphorical language that doesn't fit the scene at all. Oftentimes, Oz will internally quip or make a joke that removes all tension and suspense from the scene. Or the narrative itself will. Or the character we happen to be following will. And after hearing Jax and Oz reminisce that the Bears just took out a military Humvee and are currently bearing down on him, they're probably not from AAA, you kind of just end up rolling your eyes and like, okay, obviously he's going to be fine. Because he's clearly doesn't think he's in that much danger. To put a fine point on the writing style of this book, I'm just going to go ahead and have a third of chapter 60 read to you. Now, to be fair, that's only about 2 paragraphs worth of words. But just listen to this.
Bowen's eyes twinkle like strawberry shortcakes as the familiar, ripping, heavy metal clack of gunfire echoes across the hills. Is there anything better than guns unloading? He thinks. What else can make your eyes water and your dick hard at the same time? Shit, King mutters after 3 3-round bursts. Missed, I think it's still coming. That's what she said, says Chavez. Let me show you how it's done, Poindexter, Bowen says, parting leaves as he steps forward. When he gets to the crest of the hill, Bowen mentally does a little Scooby-Doo. Ooh?
Do I really need to spell out for you why this writing doesn't lend to what is supposed to be a scene of increasing horror as animals are grouping up strong enough to destroy a special operation team? Honestly, let's just move past the technical points and let's talk about something a little more subjective and just discuss how knackered this entire story is. For example, halfway through the book, without rhyme or reason, there's suddenly a 5-year time skip. It literally comes out of nowhere, and mostly seems to be put in because Patterson suddenly couldn't think of any more ideas to do while Oz is still trying to convince people HAC is real. So he just cut to the point in the future where Oz and Chloe are married, have a kid, animals are pretty much already on a warpath, and people are listening to Oz's whack scientific theories. Because that's much more interesting than seeing our characters struggle to get to this point. Now, obviously, I'm going to give a pass on the science of this book, which feels like Patterson read 2 Wikipedia articles and decided that's enough research, because it is a fictional sci-fi story. My suspension of disbelief regarding the premise was high enough. However, it's all the other bits I want to talk about. For example, something big. The way Patterson decided that this HAC thing works is that the emissions of petroleum-based vehicles combined with cell phone radiation has altered animal chemistry to perceive the unique human smell humans give off as instant attack mode smell. The solution is to put on a small stopgap measure on it until they can figure out a more permanent solution is to stop all cell phones and petroleum-based vehicles for about 2 weeks. Since the events of 2020 proved that humanity really would see this start to work and decide, oh, that's all well and good after 2 days, despite all the professionals angrily pulling out their hair and reminding them, stop being stupid, we need to do better. This does, however, open up a very small plot hole. We see that this method of reducing animal violence is almost near instant, with just 2 days of turning what was a war in the animal kingdom almost back into the status quo. Except, wouldn't that mean the more humans that animals killed at the height of it, the less aggressive they'd become over time? The book portrays it as the other way around. With the more people who are being killed, the higher the aggression is getting. But each human death would not only remove a cell phone, but also probably a car. So animal aggression should be winding down, not ramping up like the book is saying. Even by the time we get to the 5-year time skip, we're getting to the point where large portions of major cities are basically abandoned because the animals there have killed almost everyone. So you got to think, okay, there's got to be a point where it's going to be winding down and not revving back up, right? Except it doesn't. But that's not the only plot hole in the book. There's actually a fair amount. Now, unfortunately, they are a lot smaller. So, it's not a big point in my favor. But, there's a character named Charles Groll, who is a professor at some university who believes Oz's French theory of HAC from the very beginning. This was because he was randomly attacked by a gorilla who really fucked his shit up. Now, putting aside another scientist who believes one day animals will snap and kill humanity, owns a dog big enough to use his head as a chew toy when this happens, the timeline gets confused on him. When we first meet him, we find out that he was attacked by a gorilla almost 5 years ago. And this is what really messed him up. He's in a wheelchair, his leg was ripped off, his arm was ripped off, that kind of thing. After the time skip, we get a time where he was attacked. He reminisces on a time he was attacked by the gorilla 2 years ago. Which means, by the context of the story, he was either attacked by a gorilla 8 years after he got all of his injuries from being attacked by a gorilla, or he got attacked by another gorilla 8 years after being attacked by a different gorilla. So either this is a plot hole, or the story wasn't clear in saying that this man is really not taking the hint to stay away from gorillas. Now, the main reason I think it's a plot hole is because he references the same limbs that got torn off. And finally, the U.S. military. Look, I'm no stranger to the trope that the U.S. military tends to make the worst choices possible for events like this. Sort of like, hey, let's not kill the giant monster, but let's capture it so we can turn it into a weapon. Or, hey, let's immediately attack this highly advanced alien civilization we know nothing about.
We have to strike now, sir. Annihilate, kill.
Or, hey, I see a problem that we can't handle ourselves, but you know what? Let's bomb the shit out of it. Because that'll fix all of our problems.
With any luck, it will kill these things, and this nightmare will finally be over.
We must keep our faith in Godzilla.
I'm sorry, Doctor. You had your chance. The missile is already on its way. May God have mercy on us all.
But I have a really hard time believing that the military in this book genuinely believed the solution was, let's bomb away all animal life on Earth, because that will have no long-lasting or long-term repercussions worth considering. Let's just bomb the fuckers out of existence. It's definitely not a toxic masculine military thing to be like big gigantic sticks. And it's just like, I don't believe the military would do this. And it's like, I typically have my suspension of disbelief high for how dumb the military can be. But this was a little too much for me. So yeah, I guess in the end I'd give this book a 4 out of 10. Like I said in the beginning, it's sad that I had to rate this book so low. For the first 100 pages, this book wasn't terrible. I'm not saying it was good. It was more like a 6 out of 10. A guilty pleasure more than anything. But then it hits that hump, and it all just goes downhill. Like I said, I don't know if it was because of the introduction of Chloe, or simply because I suddenly remembered I'm reading a book that James Patterson wrote, and my tolerance meter tanked. I'm pretty sure it's not the latter, but I'm not going to say definitively. Obviously, as you can tell through my reviews, I have a lot less respect for James Patterson than I once did after I found out all I have about him. In any case, what was a semi-interesting television series I once watched with my mother, in this book is nothing more than another boring work put out by Patterson and his ghost. So the question of whether or not this deserves Mount Doom is obviously yes. Because it's really not worth the read. The ending was disappointing, the science doesn't hold up, and the narrative decisions don't make any sense of character or story scale. Factor in that I would argue that the story is much better experienced in the show that came out and not the book, which is kind of how Patterson writes his books almost. Oh, okay. Which is kind of how Patterson writes his books almost. There's not much reason to actually read this book. And I say that thinking the show wasn't all that great either, just better. At least until that final season. I remember that being really weird. And the show makes a lot more liberties, like In this book, it's just mammals that go crazy, but in the show, everything goes crazy, including insects, which makes the signs a lot harder to believe because, you know, I've mentioned before in my in my Rising review, the one I hated the most in 2023. I'm pretty sure it's called The Rising by Brian Keene. I think it's just because I'm associating The Rising with something else. Anyways, ADHD moment aside, as I mentioned in the Rising review, if all the animals in the world turned against us, we probably would be dead. We definitely would if all the insects in the world turned against us too. So, with that being said, just remember, with every book comes an adventure, and every adventure is worth having. Even if they're really stupid sometimes. Seriously, Patterson, write your own books.